All right, back now at the Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics. Joining us via Zoom to talk about what's next for the war in Iran, retired Naval Intelligence Commander Dr. Paul Chabot. He also served as White House senior advisor to President Clinton and George W. Bush. Thank you so much for being with us. It was a very busy weekend, not as fruitful as I think some would expect.
Yeah, that's correct. A few days ago, I think the world took a small sigh of relief knowing that there were talks that were planned. But when those talks failed, I think we all felt the anxiety of what was to come next. Iran really showed their hand with what they intended to do with shipping, and the United States basically one-upped them to saying, look, we've got the assets here. We are going to take control of the strait, and in doing so, we are going to enforce and create a naval blockade, something which has not been seen in quite some time.
And Dr. Chabot, I want to talk a little bit logistics with this kind of thing. I know early on the conversation in the Strait of Hormuz was that the waters were booby-trapped with mines and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What goes into the strategy in preparing a blockade like this?
Yeah, so the open source intel right now says they have not identified a single mine. It doesn't mean that they're not there, and there are a variety of types of mines. You've got old school ones that can float, some that are below the surface, and some that can sit on the ground and implode up. So our naval assets, as they go through, they're using new technology. They have drones that can go through, sonar through our ships. And what they're going to try to do is create safe passage areas. We don't need to clear the entire 21 areas north to south, just enough for ships to go through. Number one, to protect our forces, and then number two, to ensure that civilians going through are going to be safe as well. However, there is no guarantee to this. We've got to be right 100% of the time. The Iranians are going to do what I think they can to strike and cause chaos in that Gulf. And they do have the ability to do so with other means.
And as you said, Doctor, a blockade like this hasn't been done in some time. Set the scene kind of visually for us. What does it look like if we were to get kind of an aerial view of what's going on? Where is everyone positioned or hope to be positioned, at least from the U.S. side of things?
Sure. So backing up, we've got about 50,000 troops that are stationed or within many military bases. We have our 5th Fleet headquarters, CENTCOM, AOR. So we've been there. We know the air assets. We know the region. We've been planning and preparing for this for a long time. You have 2 aircraft carriers there. One is sort of out of station for some recovery work. You've got a 3rd aircraft carrier en route. You have 2 huge military expeditionary units on amphib ships, one already on scene, one coming from, I believe, San Diego, will be there in about a week. So this is a very complicated, dangerous mechanism where they basically tell ships that are coming to or from ports, no, you cannot go. And if the United States feels that those ships are not listening to them, they will absolutely board and take control of them. What we've got to watch for are Iranian drones. They got a lot of fast boats. Even though we've destroyed their big Navy, if you can imagine smaller sort of fast boats, Iran still has a lot of those and can use those in the Strait of Hormuz.
And as you briefly mentioned at the top there, the goal is to create a safe passage. The U.S. hasn't shared much intel on that in terms of the whole maritime community. What does that mean when you say safe passage or safe pockets, as you mentioned?
Yeah, so basically this is turning into almost an economic warfare aspect right now. We want to squeeze around the best we can economically. When you think about this, about 90% of their oil comes from within the Gulf, farther north in Karg Island. But it doesn't matter. We don't need to go there right now and take over their oil resources. If we simply stop all their shipments coming to and from, that in itself creates a significant barrier economically. So I think what the United States here is trying to do is apply that pressure. While we're still hearing today that there's possible negotiations, it's a negotiation tactic, but it's also something historic. That when you think about navies across the world, this is why we exist. Long before I was born, navies from Britain to France to today the United States, they have always existed to create free commerce. And so today we're seeing us use our assets to clamp down economically on an adversary.
And on the flip side, Iran's Revolutionary Guard saying today that any military vessels attempting to approach Hormuz will be met with gunfire. What does that mean, and how serious do you take those words?
That's very serious, and they do have the capability to do so because we're in such short proximity to the Iranian waters, which is where the Strait of Hormuz is. So obviously ceasefire ends at that point, and we should anticipate that a lot of the initial threats that came out of Department of War and the White House may likely come True, targeting transportation routes, potentially energy or other aspects going down. This has a very high probability of escalating quickly. Gas prices here at home are already up, and those could rise consistently more if this blockade of Iran turns into more of a battle or a dangerous route where any ship going through sees it as absolutely too dangerous. That would be the worst thing economically for the free world.
And as we wrap up here, Dr. Chabot, it's proven the Iranians, those pesky drones that they've been using have been proven effective. What is the one threat here as we move this blockade into the Strait of Hormuz to the U.S.?
It is the drones. They're relatively cheap. Iran is very good at making them. They've supplied Russia with these drones. We've reversed engineered their drones. We've created our own based on their model. And so we know they have them. What we don't know from our intel perspective is how well we've targeted their infrastructure for the manufacturing of those. And we have no idea how many exist, but we have to assume there's a significant number.
Dr. Chabot, great perspective. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you.